Annyeong! Welcome to Dollightful. What's in store for Halloween this year? Something wicked, something ancient, something alluring. That's right, this year I'm taking on the Succubus. The Succubus is a pretty well-known mythological creature and very popular in today's media. I mean, who can resist a sexy demon lady? But to summarize, the idea of a demon who visits men in their sleep to perform nefarious deeds is about as old as humanity itself. Some of the earliest writings date back to ancient Mesopotamia and describe the Lilitu demons which would seduce and prey on men. Medieval literature goes into more detail, describing the techniques and capabilities of the succubus, which I probably shouldn't repeat here on my family-friendly YouTube channel. Many of you have asked for it, and it feels like a good year to complete our little demon family. That's right, the succubus is Ember's mom. Let's cover the concept art. I did a whole bunch of rough early sketches as I tried to feel out the character. Should she have wings, fantasy armor, or maybe a more modern vibe? I didn't like any of these, so I switched to drawing hairstyles instead. I knew right away that I wanted to tackle a purple demon this time, since we already checked the box for a classic red demon with Ember. I was favoring hairstyle number 1 until I realized she was looking awfully close to another doll of mine. I guess once you've made 70-something characters, there's gonna be some overlap, huh? To distance myself from Cyrena, I ended up choosing hairstyle 2. Now I had to design the clothes, even though I still wasn't sure what direction to go in. Given that she's the mother of a teenage daughter, I'm placing her in the late 30s, early 40s maybe? But clearly as a succubus, she's still got it, you know? I tried out a couple modern dresses, but when I showed my family and friends, everyone agreed I should tilt her towards a more fantasy angle. So after a second round of drawing, I came up with these. You can see the inspiration from music festival costumes and burlesque dancers, with a touch of fantasy thrown in there. Let's go with Design A. Here's the final version. I'm in love already, she's going to be so much fun to make. What doll shall we use as a base for our demon mom? Nefera from Monster High. I know what some of you are thinking. Nefera Denial is a rare doll. Don't customize her. I don't like it either, but she's the best candidate by far. She's got the taller, larger body type and a face mold that screams seductive older lady. Her hair is also already rooted in the exact style I need for my doll, Widow's Peak included. Let's begin the transformation. As always, we strip the doll down to its bare minimum. Monster High collectors, look away now. Oh Nefera, what have I done? Once cleaned up, we can start the body modifications. Nefera's larger body type is a great shape to start with, but our succubus requires some more, enhancements. Using Apoxy Sculpt, I pinch off equal parts of components A and B, mix thoroughly, then get to work sculpting the doll's new body shape. If you've never worked with epoxy before, it feels very different from clay, sort of like working with a thick putty. Press the surface with water to smooth it down. I want her to have larger hips and thighs, but I'm restricted by the doll itself in this regard. The joints will only allow you to go so far if you want to keep the legs movable. Unless we widen the joint itself. In a technique I first saw used by Starberry Cat on Instagram, a great way to widen existing joints is to simply cut yourself some more space out of the plastic. Now we can build up a bigger shape while maintaining the articulation. And yeah, I jabbed my hand with the knife, sorry you have to see that. No Halloween doll is complete without a blood sacrifice, I guess. I build up the hips and the butt cheeks, and of course bless her with a generous figure. One problem you may encounter when sculpting is how to close awkward gaps around joints. Slip a barrier around the leg, I'm using a broken latex glove, and tape it tightly in place. Now I can sculpt on the top without worrying about the pieces sticking to each other. This ensures the two pieces are as close as possible but stay separated. Wiggle the hip around to make sure it's still articulated, then let it cure before removing the barrier. For the ears and horns, I'll be using a lightweight air dry clay instead. The shapes are pretty simple: chunky, downward-facing elf ears, and slightly curved horns. You can use water with this clay too to help squish and smooth the shapes. And there we have it! Sculpting done! Just a couple light mods this time, I'm not reworking her entire body. You know what comes next: sanding! Place the body inside the sealed plexiglass box so that you don't make a mess of your studio. Start with a rough grit sandpaper and work your way down finer and finer until either the doll is smooth or you run out of patience and call it done. Seeing as this is a curvy feminine character, I'd better take my time and make sure she's super smooth. Alright, that looks good to me. We can rinse her off with water and move on to the next step. She's got a tail and wings, remember? So I drill holes ahead of time in preparation for those parts. One at the base of the spine, and two in the square of her back, where the hinge joint will hold on the wings. Now for the fun part, painting her purple! I love washing color over the plastic and epoxy and watching them all come together into a single form. It's very satisfying. Move the joints and bend your doll into all sorts of uncomfortable poses to make sure you reach every surface. That's a bit darker than I wanted. Better mix in some white for layer 2. And finally, layer 3 to make the color truly opaque. Well, shoot, now she's too light. All my years of using acrylic paint and color matching is still a challenge. Okay, I don't want her to be lilac, so I've got no choice but to try one more time. The paint is already 3 layers thick and starting to interfere with the joints, so I have to sand it down before trying again. And here I thought the hours of butt sanding were behind me. Okay, let's do this one more time. And yeah, I think I'm back where I started. Dagnabbit! You know what? Fine. If the doll wants to be dark purple, she can be dark purple. Seal the deal with a matte varnish. I do 2 to 3 coats. Her wings were digitally sculpted and printed in resin, and her tail is also air dry clay but with armature wire inside. These also get painted with acrylic and sealed with matte varnish. The body parts look great like this, but for added finesse, I get out my pastels. Dust on a warm purple around the joints to give the skin some subtle color fluctuation. I like to redden the knees, elbows, fingertips, ears, and more. Once you're satisfied with the amount of blushing, seal the whole body with a layer of MSC. Next, let's paint on her tattoos. It was fun coming up with each of these. I drew them on paper first for practice. Then I make a light pencil sketch before painting on the black acrylic. On her right forearm, Ember, the name of her daughter. On her right horn, the devil's number in Roman numerals. On her left thigh, a pictorial tattoo representing a Sumerian goddess. This is my simplified representation of the actual historical Queen of the Night relief. Although the exact identity of the goddess depicted in this relief has not been agreed upon by scholars, there's a small chance that it might be Lilith, who is considered the OG succubus. So for our purposes, we're gonna say this is Lilith. Now her tail tattoo is a bit naughty, but I also put a lot of research into this, so I'm pretty proud of it. I searched through a list of known Sumerian words until I found the right combo, then translated those words into cuneiform, which is the oldest known writing system from ancient Mesopotamia. So what's it say? Well, if you've so much as glanced through the mythology of the succubus, you know what it means. That's the body taken care of. Shall we turn our attention to the head? I'll be using this metallic black hair for her reroute today. So shiny. As mentioned earlier, Nefera has the rooting pattern I need, so I'll simply fill it back in, no changes. Separate a plug from the hank, slip it onto the needle eye, and stab! Once all the holes have been refilled, pour glue through the neck hole and squish it around inside the head. This will secure all of those loose plugs. There we go! Reroute done! Oop, wait a minute. I forgot about the horns. I mark where the horns should go and rework the hairline accordingly. Yank the plugs out before the glue dries, and that's better. Next, I take 3 black wires and plunge them into the back of her skull. This will be the framework for her cartoonishly long genie-style ponytail. Work through the neck hole to bend the end of the wire into a stopper, then pull it into position. 3 wires is ideal because a triangular base is a strong shape that won't bend or fall over. Tuck the hair back for now in preparation for the face-up. Spray the blank face with Mr.Super Clear sealant. Make sure you wear a respirator and thrash that doll head around in the cloud's aftermath to absorb as much as possible. Okay, that part's not necessary, but it's fun. As always, the materials used for this transformation can be found in the description box below the video. For darker skin tones, I find it easier to go ahead and paint the eye whites in for starters. Then, just like with the body, we brush on pastel pigments to form soft gradients. I'm using black for eyeshadow and that same magenta purple for the nose and cheeks. I try and fail several times to build up a light lip color with pastels. You'll see me switch to pencils for the lips eventually. Now, with my concept art nearby, I begin penciling in the pupils and eye lines, as well as her wicked pair of eyebrows. It took me a while to get the shape just right. My first attempt looked too worried. Fortunately, my second try came out with just the right amount of sass. To lay pigment down faster, I whipped out my teeny tiny brush, wet the watercolor pencil, and painted it on instead. Some of my dolls have actual glowing eyes, but I'm going to save myself the trouble this time and simply paint the doll's eyes to appear as if they're glowing. This is a very simple version of what's called a color corona, or lightening the values of everything surrounding your light source to create the illusion of glow. So the black pupils become a light red, and I soften the effect with a warm gradient. Spray the doll's face again with sealant when necessary, so that we can continue building color and opacity. To age her up, I bring out the lower eyelid and darken the crevices of her nose contour and lips. Use a pink or magenta to highlight the brows and make the eyes a little more interesting. Here, I'm finally coloring the lips with pencil. I wasn't getting anywhere with that pink pastel. Occasionally, I'll blush on more pastel to flatten or unify areas of the face. I thought the nose was looking a bit too harsh and sharp, so I washed over everything with pink. Use a cream pencil to make a couple key areas really pop. And now it's time for her last tattoo. The words Igneous Amour under her left eye. Oh boy, I hope I can do this. This is so small. You know, my husband paints miniatures, and this would look gigantic to him, so I guess I can't complain. Igneous came out alright, but Amour gets lost in her eyeshadow. I guess it got a little dark up there. Oh well, not much I can do about it now. And with that, we give her a final spray of sealant. However, the face isn't done yet. Such a glamorous babe deserves 3D eyelashes. I cut a tiny curved shape out of black paper. Dab glue onto the edge and tentatively stick it to the eyes. This first connection is the hardest to make, but once that dries, you can layer up more and more glue, as many passes as you need, to essentially form a new upper eyelid. This way, you can rest assured those eyelashes are never coming off. You can trim them and cut them down once they're dry. Fabulous! Here's all the separated body parts on my operating table. I mean crafting table. Let's reassemble her. First, the head goes back on. Then we can glue on the horns and ears. Is one horn slightly bigger than the other? Well, no one's perfectly symmetrical. The wings connect like so. Overlap two 2 cm sized hinges and screw them into the back. Then the wings connect to the outside hinges like this, and voila, flappable wings. Well, to be honest, I should have thought through the design a little bit better. I don't have any nuts and bolts small enough to pass through these holes, so what am I gonna use? Well, I whipped up these funky little wooden pieces out of popsicle sticks and toothpicks. Overlap the pieces like this and glue them in place. Not my most elegant solution. You think after making so many dragon wings I'd have the technique down by now. I never learn. As for her tail, it's a tight enough fit that I can just plug it in place, no glue necessary. Keeping the tail removable will be nice for storage purposes. The doll's body is complete. The clothes went pretty quick because, let's face it, she's not wearing much. Using the materials you see before you, I crafted a slinky top, underwear, and a ton of teeny tiny coins which we'll use for her jewelry. I didn't make the shoes though, those are genuine Monster High masterpieces. I can't recall what doll they're from, but aren't they the coolest heels you've ever seen? Time to manifest her genie ponytail style. This wasn't easy. I couldn't use an elastic because they kept breaking when I'd stretch them around the armature wire. I ended up clamping a metal ring down as close to the base as I could. It ruffled the hair a bit, but I did my best. I then proceed to wrap a silver thread around and around the hair until I reach the end of the wire. Tie it off and hide the ends by slipping them back inside. We can use the same silver thread for the rest of her accessories. I clump 4 strands together to make it look thicker, cover the entire thing in glue, then wrap her tail. The headpiece was more of a challenge. Obviously, bouncy, lightweight thread isn't going to drape like real heavy jewelry. So what do? Reshape the thread using glue. To do this, we'll need a stand-in. You know her, you love her, it's Manny the Mannequin! Who's also purple at the moment. Start by wrapping the head tightly with a plastic bag. Gah, poor Manny looks like a Dexter victim. Then saturate the threads with glue and stick them to the mannequin in whatever draping fashion you desire. I had trouble controlling the coins, and to be honest, this technique wasn't as successful as I'd hoped, but I still managed to force the threads to dry in a decent position. Now to simply pop it back onto the real doll. And just for good measure, I plug in several thread staples to hold the headdress in place. The rest of her jewelry was easy by comparison, and before I knew it, bam! Succubus doll complete! Meet Zura the Succubus. I looked up plenty of ancient Latin, Persian, and Sumerian names, but couldn't find the perfect fit, so I just made one up this time. This might be the closest I've ever come to realizing my concept art. Sometimes things can change on the fly, but she's pretty darn similar to my drawing. I had so much fun making her, and I really love how she turned out. My one regret is not giving her that Eat, Sin, Love tote bag from an earlier concept. That's too good not to use. Maybe I'll make it off camera. The entire time I was making Zura, I kept in mind the genetics of the family, you know? Like, what traits did Ember inherit from her mother and father? Like, aw, she's got her mom's glowing yellow eyes, but her father's goat legs. Have a happy Halloween, and I'll see you next time. Stay artsy! 안녕!